Okay, guys, let's talk about this podcast episode, which was super interesting. The amount of evidence it gave right off the bat was an abundance amount. It was so much that kind of led to who might have done it. But pretty much, the backstory of it is this girl, her name's Shelly. I don't remember exactly how old they said she was when she was murdered, but she was murdered in an apartment in a small town, and I believe in Wyoming, I think is what it said, in a small town called Laramie, if I'm pronouncing that right. And she was murdered and whatnot, and she lived in this apartment. It was like a super... I went beyond. I didn't know if I was supposed to just watch the first one or not, so I watched like 4 or 5 of them. So sorry if I spoil anything, but it was like these small apartments. I believe they were like ground floor and kind of like an L shape. And she lived there with this girl named Michelle, who was, what I thought was interesting, it was one of her only friends in this small town. They were both there for college. We found that out when the narrator, forgetting her name or their name, but when they interviewed one of Shelly's family members, she lived there with Shelly, and Michelle, I believe was her name. Her roommate was gone that night, and so it was just Shelly by herself, and died terrible, tragic death. But there's just some things that don't add up to me, such as, first of all, Fred Lamb was his name. He was an ex-cop. Quit law enforcement, went straight into becoming a full-time National Guard. He had a family, and I believe 2 children, and he would go to his buddy's house to stay at his apartment, which was coincidentally the same exact apartment building that Shelly and her roommate lived in. And he said he was up there for basic, because when you're in the National Guard, you're not deployed. You just go back and forth between where you live and where your base is. I don't know if there's a base nearby or not, but so he would go up there, and they were about 2 or 3 doors down from Shelly and her roommate's apartment. So he would go there and stuff like that. But what doesn't make sense to me, though, is, in my opinion, how corrupt this police department is. So you have this man, right? Fred Lamb, ex-law enforcement, whatnot. My opinion, he committed this murder. No doubt in my mind. I don't know if everyone else watched ahead or not, but no doubt in my mind that this man killed this woman. And he was in this ex-law enforcement. She died. He fled the scene. And they kind of picked it up, investigated it, whatnot, and then it just kind of dropped. Like, out of nowhere, it dropped for a couple years until I think it was 2016 or 2017 they picked it back up. And I don't know if it's still open now or not, but they picked it back up. But there's something about that police department that doesn't add right. It's kind of like an old brother sort of situation, something kind of corrupt. Like, oh, he was an ex-law enforcement guy. He worked for us. And they're just kind of sliding under the rug very discreetly, which is corrupt as you can possibly be. Like, what the heck? This man brutally murdered a woman in like ungodly hours of night, and you're just gonna let some dude get away with this because he works for you? That is wrong. That is unacceptable, and shame on them for how corrupt that is. And let me pick up my notes real quick. I had something really cool to say. But yeah, there was that evidence, and then it was open, and then boom, closed all of a sudden. Again, my opinion, I believe that's because of how corrupt it was. And I don't remember if it said this in the first one or it was the second one, but they took him in for a 7-hour interrogation, right? And at the end of this interrogation, he admitted to the murder. He said, I believe, I have it written down. He said that in third person, talking about himself in third person, Fred Lamb did the murder. Fred Lamb killed Shelly. That he admitted to right then and there. I don't know why the heck he would be talking in third person or not. That's just a little strange to me. But there's just some things that just aren't necessarily really adding up here with how trying to say, oh, it's closed, lack of evidence, need more time to, figure out evidence, when there was a bloody handprint. There was blood marks that went out to the road. There was, I believe, trail of blood that led to his thing, right? And I'm about to spoil something because I believe this was in the second episode, but he answered the door at about 5 o'clock in the morning, fully clothed. That's a little weird. Just gonna say it. So this whole episode, especially this first one, was just, and how corrupt you can take a police department can be. It happens in this small town. They're gonna protect their town. They're like, oh, you know what I mean? And how corrupt it was. And to me, that is terrible. And something else I wanted to point out was, in my opinion, there was kind of a lack of an underlining lack of communication on the police department's part, and just kind of it kind of seemed like it went all over the place. Like, oh, evidence here, shut down. Evidence here, shut down. There was this communication on the outside. Everyone knew who this person was. She went to school in that town, whatever, right? Everyone knew who she was. And there was all this evidence pointing to Fred Lamb, yet communication was, in my opinion, lacking in the police department, unless there was this little inner circle of people who kind of knew what was going on, but was just kind of shutting everything down. That is pretty much all I really have, but it's so sad to see that, people who are, supposed to protect us, right? Protect us without, and solve things and keep us safe. Yet there can be corruption within that. And this case with Shelly is one of those things. I mean, the evidence is directly there. It's in your face. It's right off the bat telling you this guy did it. He admitted to it in third person, which him speaking in third person is a little strange. That leads to some other stuff down the line. The fact that he was up at 4 or 5 in the morning in his apartment, well, not his apartment, his friend's apartment, fully clothed. There's just this huge corruption scheme, in my opinion. So, yeah.